obvious now, but it wasn't until fairly able to make the connection between the 1993 comedy and the more recent MCU installment. When Stephen Strange's car crashes in the first act of the movie, his watch stops on February 2nd. Whether anyone noticed in theaters, it wasn't fully picked up by the general public until February 2018, when director Scott Derrickson confirmed on social media.
Excelsior.
Stan Lee. It wouldn't be a Marvel movie without a Stan Lee cameo, and while it's never a blink and you'll miss it performance, he's always there long enough to make an impression, but he never stays long enough to really make a dent in the story. We suppose that's a good thing, in that he's usually given something humorous to do.
Are you Tony Stank?
But he never distracts from the action at hand. Still, for a guy as likable and with as much of a connection to the material as Lee, you always hope he'll be given something fun to do. While his shining moment in Doctor Strange isn't anything more than innocent bystanders sitting on a bus while Strange and Mordo blow past them, his appearance comes with an Easter egg that deepens the details of the Strangeverse. Here, Lee is holding a copy of Aldous Huxley's 1954 book, The Doors of Perception. While it may not be as well remembered to modern readers, Huxley's extended essay was a big influence on the counterculture that blossomed out of the 1960s, and its ideas on the capacity and potential of the human mind no doubt served as a big influence on Stan Lee and Steve Ditko as they developed and realized the world of Stephen Strange.
Don't even find dead stick.
Potential team-up. Any superhero movie worth its weight in vibranium knows to toss in a throwaway reference to other heroes and storylines. It keeps the hardcore fans invested and usually goes unnoticed by casual viewers, and thus doesn't serve as a distraction. Basically, it helps more than it hurts. And when more casual fans look back on the older movies after watching later installments, they'll be enthralled by the hidden messages they may have missed. Maybe when we get to the Doctor Strange sequel or a future Avengers film, we'll all look back on the following reference with awe. Or maybe you'll just think, duh, that was obvious. Well, regardless of your abilities to tell where the story is going, the scene leading up to his fateful car accident, where Doctor Strange is reviewing potential patients over his speakerphone, might be packed with more references than you originally thought. Turning them down as hopeless cases, Strange dismisses one possible surgical patient whose ailment sounds pretty familiar. A colonel in the US military whose spinal cord was damaged in an experimental armor/battlesuit accident. We all know James Rhodey Rhodes was paralyzed after his mid-flight fall in Captain America: Civil War. So could this be foreshadowing to a long-awaited Strange Iron Man team-up? Let's wait and see.
I see through you!
Psychedelic art. With the counterculture in the 60s and 70s, pop culture finally caught up to a level of experimentation that the visual arts had already been exploring for years. Artists like Salvador Dali were expanding what we thought possible with perception and perspective, causing us to question what even constituted art. M.C. Escher's mathematical and measured out landscapes hurt the mind as viewers try to figure out what is up and what is down, and it's obvious that the crazy geometric shapes made by the folding and reflective cityscapes, you know, when the Ancient One takes Doctor Strange on a series of mind-bending training sessions through big cities, these graphically challenging masterpieces gave original artist Steve Ditko the inspiration he needed to find the visual tone of Doctor Strange's world and the mind-blowing dreamscapes of his trippy, mystic adventures.
Teach me.
Even after all these decades since Strange's very first appearance in the Strange Tales comic book series, director Scott Derrickson felt that Ditko's surreal artistry still hadn't been brought to life on the big screen. With his movie, he said, "I don't think visual effects were ready to try and imitate him, but VFX finally caught up with Steve Ditko." Piper at the Gates. While we're on the subject of trippy, the instrumentals and vocals of Pink Floyd do for music what Dali was doing for visual arts. It's a surreal rock that captures the thoughtful and explorational changes the music industry was going through in the 60s and 70s. Naturally, in the drive leading up to Doctor Strange's car crash that sets his character's journey in motion, we can hear Pink Floyd's Interstellar Overdrive, a song from their 1967 album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Doctor Strange actually served as inspiration for the band, band, with the character making a hidden appearance on their second album cover and being brought up in their song Cymbeline. In the lyrics, "And Doctor Strange is always changing size." In keeping the Floyd and Marvel connection alive, Benedict Cumberbatch made a guest appearance at a concert hosted by guitarist David Gilmour a couple weeks before Doctor Strange's 2016 release date, in which the star sang the band's hit song Comfortably Numb. And speaking of bands connected to the Sorcerer Supreme and vice versa, we mentioned previously that Stan Lee's cameo featured his bystander character reading from Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception. Well, for your information, the title of Huxley's work is from where the seminal 60s band The Doors got their name.
We're not savages.
Undeath and Undestruction. When directing the movie, Scott Derrickson pulled a Spielberg, and just like when the latter was restoring E.T. for its anniversary re-release several years ago, he removed all the guns from the picture. Derrickson decided to craft a superhero movie that didn't feature guns in the frames. According to an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Derrickson stated that the purpose was more of a statement about superhero movies in general. Guns are usually an obstacle to a superpowered superhero. They're oftentimes one of the only ways an average human can get a leg up on our hero. But according to Derrickson, there's nothing less magical than a gun. Getting rid of any kind of traditional hardware was necessary to make it about more than destructiveness, which is a common theme within the action sequences and set pieces of the film.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
The ending itself, through its use of time travel and slow motion, is more about rebuilding the city than it is about death and destruction, which is refreshing in a genre where most climaxes involve heroes attempting to stop planet-destroying weapons, planet-destroying beings, or planet-destroying planets. We're looking at you, the eventual appearance of Darkseid in a Superman movie coming to a theater near us several years from now, we hope.
We will now receive the power to destroy the one who betrayed us.
Mindless Ones. When the villain Caecilius is sucked away towards the dark dimension, there's a chance you saw him and his henchmen transform into shadowy beings with beams of red light coming out of their eyes, like some kind of dark version of Cyclops from X-Men. This was not some random side effect of the mystical world they were getting pulled into. This is likely their transformation into the Mindless Ones. Doctor Strange might have been able to defeat them in their old forms, but the Mindless Ones are known to be incredibly powerful entities with the ability to bring destruction wherever they go. Hailing from the dark dimension, the Mindless Ones have a hefty center of gravity, allowing them to withstand most obstacles. They don't make much noise, which is all the more threatening as their sheer numbers overtake and overpower their enemies. Caecilius himself seems to become one of these creatures as he is absorbed into Dormammu's dimension, and if he loses all identity in joining a Borg-like army of Mindless Ones, there's no telling what type of terror Dormammu's army will unleash upon the world in the Doctor Strange sequels.
It's the end and the beginning.
If Caecilius is in fact a Mindless One, would we ever be able to tell it was Mads Mikkelsen underneath that dense outer shell and behind that glowing red eye? We'll see.
I see they made you master of this sanctum.
Brother Voodoo. In one of the more subdued cameos, a character from the Doctor Strange comics made a brief appearance, but only under his alter ego. He wasn't flat out named in the movie, but according to director Scott Derrickson, an actor named Mark Anthony Brighton was playing a larger role than just that of one of the Ancient One's guardians. In the film, Derrickson assigned this character the name of Daniel Drum. True fans might recognize Drum as the alter ego of Brother Voodoo, a deep-cut character from the comics. Derrickson revealed the guy's identity during a Q&A following the release of the film. He stated that Daniel Drum was killed by Caecilius, setting the stage for the character to be resurrected as Brother Voodoo in a later installment, just as he appears in the comics. Derrickson explained that when you go to make a movie like this, you have this huge buffet of characters. I don't see a Doctor Strange franchise without him. Spirit-bound to his twin brother Jericho, Brother Voodoo is a Haitian superhero who eventually becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme. It'll be interesting to see if the MCU follows this arc as they delve deeper into the Doctor Strange mythos.
Vaulting boots of Valtor.
Voltor. Voltor is the name that gets thrown around a lot by Strange and his associates. Voltor is first mentioned under the title of The Vapors of Voltor in Doctor Strange's first appearance, Strange Tales number 115. There have never been any footwear in the comics like the vaulting boots of Voltor that are mentioned in the movie, but Voltor's name is lent to many magic artifacts throughout the comics. Other mystical objects also have their origins in classic issues, like the Wand of Watum, which first showed up in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2, famous for the first adventure to feature Doctor Strange and the Web Slinger in the same comic book. As Steve Ditko created both characters, it's awesome to see him play with the styles of both superheroes in the same panels. The Cloak of Levitation has also been around since Strange Tales number 127, in Dormammu's second appearance, but even the experts at the website Den of Geek don't believe the cloak has ever been given as much of a mind of its own as it has in the movie. Most importantly, Doctor Strange's magic Eye of Agamotto is used by the Doctor to manipulate the time around him. Fans strongly believe this to be the Time Stone, one of the Infinity Stones for which Thanos is searching.
What's this, my mantra?
Shambhala. Shambhala is a great classic rock song by Three Dog Night and a great joke in the Doctor Strange movie. In the midst of Stephen Strange's training, Mordo hands him a browned scrap of paper with the mysterious text Shambhala scratched onto it. Strange and we, the audience, assume it's some kind of awe-inspiring magical word, but Mordo clarifies it's the Wi-Fi password. However, in the Hindu and Tibetan Buddhist religions, Shambhala is a sacred kingdom that's home to legendary texts and is a site of great knowledge. It's also the title of a 1986 Strange story in which the Sorcerer Supreme deals with the passing of the Ancient One. Sure, Shambhala is just a bit played for laughs in the movie, but if the characters know about it enough to name a Wi-Fi password after it, maybe it does serve some importance to the story going forward. And perhaps the movie is making a connection between the ancient source of knowledge and our new unlimited source of knowledge, the internet. Maybe Doctor Strange just needs to ask himself the same question Three Dog Night asks in their song. How does your light shine in the halls of Shambhala?
A what?
You might have a gift for the mystic arts, but you still have much to learn.
That is the future calling.
King T'Chaka. In Captain America Civil War, audiences got their first look at the Black Panther on the big screen. The newly minted Panther set out on a revenge quest on the person responsible for killing his father. The former King T'Chaka was played by South African actor John Connie. We didn't get to see much of him in Civil War, but this influence on Wakanda and T'Challa are expanded upon in the Black Panther film. We get a few scenes with a younger T'Chaka in the film, and at first you may be forgiven in thinking that Marvel simply CGI'd a younger face onto Connie's face. It does look pretty dang similar, and considering his actions play a pivotal role in setting things in motion, it's a face that should leave an impression. But unlike Robert Downey Jr., Michael Douglas, and Kurt Russell, all of whom use CGI to appear younger in the MCU, the flashback T'Chaka was actually portrayed by John Connie's son, Atandwa Connie. Even though face-altered CGI has come a long way since the days of Benjamin Button and looks really good these days, we love that Connie's son was used instead, and gave powerful yet brief scenes.
The Black Panther has been the protector of Wakanda for generations.
What's in a name? The world isn't the same as it was back in 1966 when Black Panther first debuted, and that's for the better in many regards. But since the comic was originally written in a time where things could be sometimes painfully racist, there are some weird things that stand out when looking back. One such thing is the comic book character named Man-Ape. Yep, we're not making this one up. Man-Ape was typically portrayed to worship gorillas with his tribe and would often be found wearing white gorilla furs on his armor. But when it came time to make a live-action Black Panther film for a 2018 release date, Marvel and director Ryan Coogler knew that such a name wasn't going to fly, so it was pretty easy to scrap it. But just because the name was cut doesn't mean the character was. Yeah, Man-Ape was in the film, and he was M'Baku. We can see the similarities already, even though there were some slight alterations. M'Baku still wore the white furs on his armor, which was straight out of the comics. Early on in the film, M'Baku challenges T'Challa to the throne of Wakanda and enters the battle wearing a gorilla mask, a clear call-out to his comic book origins.
Excuse me, Miss Romanoff? Yes. Please need your signature.
Oakland. In a surprise move, the Black Panther did not open up in Wakanda, nor did it feature the Black Panther we knew from Civil War. Instead, the action opens up in 1992 in Oakland, California, in what could only be described as a neighborhood block that has seen better days. Oakland is actually important for a few reasons. In terms of actual real-world history and to director Ryan Coogler. In terms of movie-making experience, Coogler may be young, but he's by no means a novice. His two other films garnered much acclaim, including his debut, Fruitvale Station, starring Panthers Michael B. Jordan and also set in Oakland. But even more interesting is the connection to the history of the term Black Panther. Founded in 1966 in Oakland, the Black Panther Party would become an important and divisive factor for the civil rights movement.
All the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
So much so that Marvel actually changed the name of their comic book character Black Panther, who actually debuted a few months before the political party hit the scene. Marvel eventually decided that they shouldn't be bound by politics and switched T'Challa's name back, and the rest they say is history.
Justice will come soon enough.
With that in mind, it's a neat touch that Coogler opened the film in Oakland. He could have picked any city in the world, but clearly wanted to tie things together.
Move, or you will be moved.
Familiar turf. Killmonger is one of the more realized MCU villains to date. Fans and critics agreed that Michael B. Jordan nailed the role, giving audiences a villain with multiple layers and logical motivation to be doing the things he's doing. By the film's climax, Killmonger wants to unleash Wakandan technology on the world and essentially wipe out anyone who would persecute the weak and oppressed. To do that, he launches a series of jets into the air for specific destinations around the world for various war dogs to make use of. The orders were naturally met with some resistance, or uncertainty around the globe, thanks to a quick line from Wakabi, but there were some cells that were more than up for the tasks. Interestingly though, those cells who were game were from cities known to eagle-eyed fans of the MCU. They resided in London, Hong Kong, and New York. Do those cities seem relevant to you? Fans of Doctor Strange will recognize them as the cities that house the three Earths Sanctus Sanctorum, the mystical defense that protects the planet. Is this a clever Easter egg for MCU fans, or does the Sanctum's very existence encourage challenge, to paraphrase Vision?
I'm saying there may be a causality.
Time will tell once Thanos shows up in Infinity War. Stolen Mask. We first meet the film's excellent villain, Killmonger, in London during a museum heist. The radical Wakandan American wants to return to his roots and reveal Wakanda to the world, challenging anyone who dares oppress the weak and helpless around the world. An eerie plan indeed, especially in 2018. Helping him on his crusade is of course Andy Serkis's Ulysses Klaue, who we first met back in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Want the candy?
The main goal of the heist was to steal and eventually sell a vibranium artifact to the CIA for big money, but something else caught Killmonger's eyes in the museum. While they do leave with the Wakandan weapon, Killmonger steals a mask because he's feeling it. He later uses it to break Ulysses out of CIA custody in Korea. As he does that though, he winks to the audience from behind the mask. Why? As it turns out, this mask is near enough ripped straight from the comics. While obviously not a direct match, the similarity between the MCU version and the comic book version, which debuted in Black Panther number 38 in Reginald Hudlin's series. Moonlight. Despite the huge mix-up at the Oscars, Moonlight gets to carry the respect and honor of winning Best Picture at the Oscars.
Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
A huge win for people of color a year after Oscars So White went viral. Almost a year after the award was handed out, Black Panther has roared into cinemas, a beacon of hope and inclusivity.
And it is true, it's not fake.
So why bring up Moonlight? Well, there's actually a connection between the two films, even if it's just a little one. At the end of the film, when T'Challa opens up the new programs in Oakland and reveals his technologically advanced aircraft, a young boy confronts the king on the basketball court. That boy is, of course, Alex R. Hibbert, who portrayed young Chiron. Coogler is one of many directors who praised Moonlight and found a way to tip his hat towards the film and its director, Barry Jenkins, in his own movie. So naturally, Ryan Coogler was one of those directors who showed up while he was working on the early pre-production of Black Panther. If that wasn't enough connection though, Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman is actually going to star in Jenkins' next film, Expatriate. How's that for an actor shuffle? Straight out of the comic. One of the big moments in the film was when Killmonger walked up to T'Challa and challenged him for the right to the throne. Thanks to his royal heritage, he is able to make this request, something the Black Panther obliges. The pair has a showdown on a cliffside in ritualistic combat, where the winner is determined by the death or surrender of the opponent. Needless to say, this choice of location isn't coincidental. While we get to see it earlier on in the film when M'Baku challenges T'Challa, it was merely to set up the rules for the fight against Killmonger. This particular duel is taken straight out of the comic books, specifically the Christopher Priest run. In that series, in issue 20, Black Panther and Killmonger have a ritualistic duel upon a cliffside near a waterfall, and once Killmonger is declared victor, he tosses T'Challa over the edge, seemingly killing him off. Fans of the comics will know that it's one of the most memorable moments on the page. There are some variations, though. For one, CIA agent Everett Ross, played in the film by Martin Freeman, yields for T'Challa in the comics after accidentally distracting him, thus giving Killmonger the throne by default.
Unarmed combat and become the king of Wakanda!
Killmonger's gold suit. After defeating T'Challa in ritualistic combat, Killmonger is declared King of Wakanda, and thus by royal mandate and tradition, he is bestowed the power of the Black Panther and his own suit. Unlike T'Challa, who sports both his classic black suit and his new purple motif design, Killmonger's features a yellow motif and, more interestingly, a design that doesn't look that much like a panther. Thanks to some spots in the gold-yellow design of the suit, Killmonger... And there's a comic book reason for that. On the page, specifically Jungle Fever #6, Killmonger was on the attack and unleashed his trusty sidekick, Prey. Unlike most sidekicks or aides though, Prey, with an extra Y of course, was a tamed leopard under Killmonger's control. But there's a secondary reference that ties into the leopard. Remember back when we mentioned Marvel changed the Black Panther comic name in the 60s to distance themselves from the Black Panther Party? Well, the name they chose was Black Leopard, so Killmonger's suit was definitely a mighty homage to that brief name change. Do you think Black Panther is a better name for a comic book hero, or do you like the sound of Black Leopard better? Let us know in the comments.
Given time.
That Old American Movie. One of the funniest and coolest characters in the film is T'Challa's sister, Shuri. She's something of a genius and may in fact be smarter than Tony Stark himself. She operates similarly to Q from the James Bond films, creating tech for our hero and providing guidance and aid. She's just way smarter and more hip than Q.
You finished?
Yes.
Good.
When giving T'Challa a peek at some of her new toys, she shows him a set of sneakers, form-fitting footwear that muffles sound and morphs to the user's foot. She then references an old American movie in passing and never brings up the comment again, which is unusual considering the amazing technology we've just seen in action. It's one of those quick, easy-to-miss lines, but if you know your movies, you'll know exactly which one Shuri was talking about. Given up yet?
Future. Unbelievable.
It's actually Back to the Future, too. In that film, Marty McFly gets a set of self-tying shoes.
Power laces, all right.
A pretty handy invention we've yet to get in the real world. But Shuri's shoes, which self-assemble around T'Challa's feet from nothing but the base, definitely echo those nifty shoes that Marty got. Good to know they get Hollywood movies in Wakanda.
I didn't kill your father.
Then why did you run?
The White Wolf. You'd be surprised how many people leave during the credits of a Marvel film, as if they had no idea that there are 2 after-credit scenes in 2018. While the first scene was a message of hope and inclusivity aimed at the film's UN as much as it was for the audience in the cinema, the follow-up scene brought up many MCU and comic book questions. In it, we see some... Well, thanks to a Marvel Prelude comic, or some connecting the dots if you haven't read it, you'll figure out that Shuri did indeed cure Barnes. Furthermore, Barnes is referred to as the White Wolf. While the Winter Soldier is never the White Wolf, the Black Panther had an ally and adoptive brother in the comics, a Caucasian named Hunter, who eventually went by the name White Wolf and was considered one of T'Challa's most trusted allies. Potential foreshadowing for things to come? Fun fact, Shuri alludes to Barnes' treatment early in the film, when she casually mentions having to treat another broken white boy.
Showtime, a-holes!
Mattel Football. Remember that scene right at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when the titular team were tasked by the Sovereign to fight the Obelisk, the multidimensional being that was devouring the power sources on their home planet? Well, you may also remember that Peter Quill was holding a gadget in his hand prior to the creature's arrival. It was clearly some kind of sensor, as its screen depicted the 5 members of the Guardians of the Galaxy in green, while also showing the incoming Obelisk in red. But did you notice, what the gadget actually was? It was a modified Mattel football game from Earth, and another important nod to Quill's past. Mattel Football was a handheld game that was first released in 1977, which was just before Peter Quill was born, but it certainly makes sense that they'd still be around when he was growing up. It was incredibly popular, and it could be argued that it was the first major standalone handheld video game smash hit.
That's intense.
Interestingly, it has also been featured in a number of other movies before its appearance in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, such as 1996 crime comedy Bottle Rocket and 2001 satirical comedy Wet Hot American Summer.
Prepare for a really bad letdown!
Berhurt. Early in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when the titular team were attempting to escape from the Sovereign's hostile fleet, and while Rocket and Peter Quill argued about which of them is the better pilot, Gamora actually named during a loud combat sequence, and the name also appeared on the screen briefly alongside a string of coordinates specifying its location in the universe after the Guardians crash-landed there. For most Marvel Cinematic Universe fans, and indeed most casual comic book fans, the name Berhurt means nothing. But it's actually quite important in the comics. It's the home of the Sagittarians, and it first appeared way back in 1969 in The Incredible Hulk. People, the aforementioned Sagittarians, are a race who were thrust into a conflict involving the Hulk, a character called the Galaxy Master, and their own leader, Princess Daedra. Could Berhurt's inclusion in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 be hinting at that story coming to the MCU at some point? It's certainly not out of the question, but it's a cool Easter egg regardless.
You know what they say? You're out of luck until you've gone duck.
Contraxia. While the Guardians of the Galaxy were on Berhurt, doing their best to avoid the wrath of the Sovereign and getting better acquainted with Peter Quill's father, Ego, there was a different kind of action going on another planet. The planet in question was Contraxia, where Yondu and the Ravagers were shown to be enjoying some debauchery befitting of their characters, in the form of alcohol and brothels populated by robotic ladies of the night. Like Berhurt, Contraxia may have seemed like an irrelevant planet with a silly name, but it also has more significance than meets the eye. In the comics, it's the homeworld of Marie, the mother of the part to be doused in his father's chemicals, resulting in him gaining energy manipulation powers.
Is he cool? Hell yeah, he's cool.
Now that we know Contraxia exists in the MCU, we may see Jack of Hearts in the future of the franchise.
No, what?
Cronins. There was a very funny and memorable scene in Volume 2 in which Rocket, Yondu, and Groot made 700 space jumps to reach Ego's planet in order to help Peter Quill. You remember it, right? It was the scene where their faces distorted in a hilariously cartoonish way because they weren't really supposed to make that many jumps. Their journey took them to a variety of different locations across the cosmos, including one where Stan Lee's character was hanging out with a group of watchers, probably boring them to death with stories about his time on Earth.
Hey, wait, where are you going?
But one of the locations they jumped through briefly showed a species that Marvel Cinematic Universe fans know quite well. It only lasted a couple of seconds, but two Cronins could be seen fighting on an unidentified planet. They're the same species as Korg from 2017's Thor Ragnarok, and that huge roaring warrior that Thor turned to rubble in 2013's Thor: The Dark World. Who knows, one of them might even have been Korg prior to his enslavement on Sakaar. It was a really smart little Easter egg that further emphasizes the fact that all Marvel Cinematic Universe movies take place in the same reality.
I have found meaning.
Eternity. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was undoubtedly the most cosmic of the MCU's movies to date, so it was no surprise to uncover the true meaning of this particular moment in the movie. When Ego was revealing his plan to take over the universe to his son, Peter Quill, he tapped him on the forehead and gave him some kind of cosmic vision. As a result, Peter's eyes turned black and starry, and he said he could see eternity. To most people, Peter was simply referring to the fact that he could see everything in existence, or the fact that he could see beyond the edge of the known universe. But the most clued up of Marvel fans knew he was referring to the cosmic being known as eternity.
Really?
In the comic books, Eternity's whole body just so happens to be black and starry, just like Peter's eyes during his vision. The gigantic and immensely powerful character had previously been pictured in the first Guardians movie as well, on the walls of the Temple Vault on Marag, right at the start of the movie. Eternity played a major role in the Infinity Gauntlet comic book arc, and if these MCU Easter eggs were foreshadowing the introduction of the character on the big screen, things are gonna get awesome real quick.
Pete, come on.
Peter's grandfather. So, do you remember what Ego's big plan was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? He planted his celestial seeds all over the universe with the intention of combining his power with another celestial being, in this case his son, Peter Quill, in order to have those seeds grow all over the cosmos and shape the universe in his own image. Well, when Kurt Russell's character put his plan into action and started to take over the planets where he'd left those seeds, a gigantic blue cosmic blob started growing near a Dairy Queen in Missouri and began to envelop the planet Earth.
That's disgusting.
At one point in that scene, the blob only barely missed crushing a car. It was very easy to miss the fact that the passenger in that car was none other than Peter Quill's grandfather, played by Greg Henry, who was making his second appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, having first appeared as a younger version of the same character in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And the fact that we know he's still alive opens the door for a reunion between Grandpa Quill and his long-lost grandson in the future of the franchise.
Who?
Simon Williams. Suffice to say, you definitely missed this one because it wasn't actually in the movie, but it's definitely still worth including here. When Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was still in production, some interesting details were spotted on a small town set. It was in a scene on Earth at an event called the Simon Williams Film Festival. There were a number of fake movie posters that featured frequent James Gunn collaborator Nathan Fillion as the actor Simon Williams. There was a movie starring Williams as Tony Stark in a movie about Stark's life, a movie called Archon, which looked like a Conan the Barbarian type adventure, a generic romantic comedy called Oh Rebecca, an action thriller called Dead Before Arrival that looked similar to The Bourne Identity, a horror called Haxan 2, which looked very similar to Horns, and the awesome sounding Toxic Janitor 2, which was a takeoff on The Toxic Avenger, a movie by the brilliant Troma Company where Gunn got his start in the world of making movies. Awesome! The reason this is important, even though the scene never made it into the movie, is because Simon Williams, the guy Nathan Fillion was playing in those posters, just so happens to be the superhero Wonder Man in Marvel's comics. So we now know that he exists in the MCU.
Hello, sir.
The Troll Doll. In the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Peter Quill quite literally trolled Yondu when he replaced the orb with a troll doll, when Yondu thought he was going to be getting his hands on an Infinity Stone. When the leader of the Ravagers died in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Peter placed that very same troll doll by his side. It was easily distinguishable as the same one because easily missable moment was more important than people might have realized. It meant that Yondu had kept it because it had sentimental value, in spite of the fact he was expecting to possess an Infinity Stone in its place. Instead of feeling angry and betrayed at Peter swapping the items and double-crossing him, Yondu was actually proud because he brought him up to be a smart Ravager.
Yeah, Quill turned out okay.
Yondu specified in the movie that he felt as though he was Peter's real daddy, and the fact that he'd kept an item that reminded him of his adopted son proved that he cared for him and he wanted to be reminded that he'd done a good job of raising him. Of course, Yondu also quite clearly enjoyed collecting silly little trinkets, so there's that too.
It's a Ravager funeral.
Eldritch Magic. In one of the many mid-credits scenes of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Sylvester Stallone's Staker O'Gord reunited with his former teammates. They were Aletta O'Gord, played by Michelle Yeoh, Martinex, played by Michael Rosenbaum, Charlie 27, played by Ving Rhames, Mainframe, played by Miley Cyrus, and Krugar, who must have been completely CGI because he apparently wasn't played by anybody. It's the worm-like Krugar that we're going to be talking about here, as he did something pretty important when Staker O'Gord's team got back together. When O'Gord suggested decided that the team should go back to their old ways. Every team member agreed in their own unique style. Krugar's method of agreeing with his leader was to conjure a mandala in the shape of a thumbs up, a mandala being a fiery holographic shape created using Eldritch magic. What people might not realize is that Eldritch magic is the same exact thing Doctor Strange and the Masters of the Mystic Arts have used previously in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the comics, Krugar was actually Strange's apprentice, and he went on to succeed his master as Sorcerer Supreme. His use of Eldritch magic could be hinting at something similar happening in the MCU's future. The credits. As with all Marvel Cinematic Universe movies these days, it's well worth watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2's credits, and not just for the mid and post-credits scenes. The credits themselves were full of fun Easter eggs for viewers to spot, and some pretty cool songs from the soundtrack played over them to boot. Pretty much every major character in the movie, from Nebula to Peter Quill's grandfather, was seen dancing along to the music, while Howard the Duck also made an appearance. But a couple of characters who weren't in the movie appeared too. Cosmo the Space Dog, who was briefly seen in the first Guardians movie, was one of them, and Jeff Goldblum's Grand Master from Thor Ragnarok joined in with the dancing. David Hasselhoff, who briefly appeared in the movie itself and sang on the soundtrack, also appeared, saying, "We are Groot." Speaking of which, amongst the text on the screen, the words "I am Groot" could be seen on a number of occasions before transforming into credits. And finally, just like in the credits from the first Guardians movie, the words "No raccoons or tree creatures were harmed during the making of this feature" were included, but this time they were followed by the words, "The same cannot be said for the handlers of said raccoons and tree creatures." Nice.
That's a fake laugh.
And that's the end of our video. Did you enjoy it? Did you notice any other important details in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos like this one. See you soon, guys. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is famously teeming with Easter eggs and references. Some of them are included merely for the fun of it, while others have led to bigger things in the franchise. For example, Stephen Strange was very briefly name-dropped in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and now Doctor Strange is a prominent member of the MCU's cast of characters. There have, however, been hundreds more, some of which are yet to be referenced again. This video will look into 10 such examples that could become relevant in the future. These MCU Easter eggs and references could definitely lead to bigger things. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's the best way of keeping up to date with all of Screen Rant's great new videos.
Odin's treasures.
Fake. Most of the stuff in here is fake.
Odin's Trophy Room. In 2011's Thor movie, audiences were introduced to the wonders of Odin's Trophy Room on Asgard. It was featured in the movie because the frost giants of Jotunheim had gained access to it, courtesy of the traitorous Loki, in order to get their hands on the casket of ancient winters, which they intended to use to bring their species back to its former glory. Of course, they were thwarted in their attempts to take it by the destroyer armor, which eviscerated them with its powerful energy blasts. But the scene revealed that Odin had a number of powerful items stashed away. Of course, the Infinity Gauntlet in there has since been revealed to be fake, but the Orb of Agamotto and the Eternal Flame were in there too, which ended up being Easter eggs for Doctor Strange and Thor Ragnarok respectively. With that in mind, the fact that the Tablet of Life and Time and the Warlock's Eye were also in there could turn out to be interesting. The Warlock's Eye, for example, could lead to the introduction of Harrokin, the leader of the Legions of Valhalla, as he is the most prominent character to have used it in the comics, and he'd be a fantastic addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he could very easily work alongside Hela in future movies.
Proceed to your designated vehicle for swiftest evacuation.
Project Pegasus. In the opening scenes of 2012's Avengers movie, the setting was a shield base on which the Tesseract was being studied by Erik Selvig. Due to the fact that the aforementioned Infinity Stone was misbehaving, an evacuation was called that resulted in a lot of frantic movement within the base. In one scene, a soldier was seen ushering people towards the exit, and a sign was briefly on show behind him. On the sign, the words Project Pegasus were clearly seen. Those words were only on screen for a matter of seconds, but given the relevance of them in the comics, it seems unlikely that they wouldn't lead to anything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the comics, Project Pegasus is an initiative that studies alternative sources of energy, in the same way S.H.I.E.L.D. were studying the Tesseract in the MCU, and it's associated with a number of prominent heroes. Its inclusion in the Avengers movie could have hinted towards the introduction of the likes of Quasar and Blue Shield, for example, as both of those guys have been head of security on the project, and Quasar, who is otherwise known as Wendell Vaughn, would be a particularly fantastic addition to the MCU Avengers. Grandmaster's Tower. 2017's Thor Ragnarok saw the Hulk as the champion gladiator on Sakaar in the Grandmaster's Tournament of Champions. The Grandmaster, played brilliantly by Jeff Goldblum, was the main man on the planet, with servants and bodyguards working for him, and he also had a tower built that was devoted to his legacy. On the side of his tower, the very recognizable faces of his former champion, Beta Ray Bill. While the inclusion of some of those characters are nothing more than fun nods to the comics, you have to believe that at least a couple of them will lead to something bigger. Beta Ray Bill and Ares in particular would be fantastic additions to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Both characters are powerful heroes. Well, in Ares' case, he's an anti-hero, and they could provide some much-needed support to the existing good guys in the MCU. Their introduction could lead to some very interesting stories and concepts for the franchise. For example, Beta Ray Bill could become a member of a live-action Annihilators team, and Ares would mean the Olympian gods were coming to the MCU, and that really would be awesome.
This is the staff of the Living Tribunal.
The staff of the Living Tribunal. 2016's Doctor Strange movie featured many objects of power, both of a mystical and cosmic nature. Of course, the most prominent example was the Eye of Agamotto Infinity Stone, also known as the Time Stone, which was used to trap Dormammu in a time loop and reverse time to undo the destruction caused by the villain's dark dimension merging with Earth. Other items either seen or mentioned in the movie included the Evil Eye of Avalon, the Wand of Watum, the Staff of One, and the Vaulting Boots of Voltor, all of which could potentially lead to the introduction of characters or plots relating to them from the comics. However, the most intriguing item was the Staff of the Living Tribunal, which was essentially a mystical weapon similar to both a whip and a pair of nunchucks. Carl Mordo used and specifically named the item during a training scene involving the titular Strange. In the comics, the Living Tribunal is the second most powerful being in the Marvel Universe, behind only the one above all, who is essentially God. Should that item's inclusion in the MCU be hinting toward the character's appearance in the franchise, it would be absolutely incredible. He is powerful enough to shut down the power of the Infinity Stones. Make of that what you will.
We house the galaxy's largest collection of fauna, relics, and species of all manner.
The Collector's Museum. The Collector's Museum, which has been seen in the mid-credits scene of 2013's Thor: Dark World, as well as in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, is a veritable treasure trove of Easter eggs and references to the wider Marvel Universe and beyond. The likes of Howard the Duck and the slugs from Slither were in there, but there were also countless other exhibits. A Dark Elf was on show, which could hint towards the return of the species that we thought were dead following the events of the second Thor movie. Cosmo the Space Dog was in there, which could indicate that he'll be joining the Guardians of the Galaxy in a future movie, just like he has in the comics, and there was a Zeronian in there, which could see the introduction of their planet and race in the MCU, and that, in turn, could see the powerful space parasite making an appearance. All that being said, there were countless exhibits in the museum that haven't even been identified yet, so the extent of the possibilities that could come from them is unknown. Thanos will be paying the Collector a visit in Avengers: Infinity War in order to collect the Aether, and we may discover he's hiding some other potentially important items when that happens.
We'd only like to use you as a consultant.
You can't afford me.
The S.H.I.E.L.D. map. At the end of 2010's Iron Man 2, at the S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house where Tony Stark was being debriefed by Nick Fury, there was a map in the background. On the map, there were a number of superhero hotspots highlighted. The location of the Hulk's battle with General Ross's forces was on there, the place where Mjolnir landed in the New Mexico desert was on there, a couple of locations pertaining to Captain America were on there, and Wakanda was highlighted on there, an Easter egg that only recently came into fruition, of course. But there's also another location in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and that hasn't been explored yet, but it certainly certainly could be. It's the location of Atlantis in Marvel's comic books, and if that's what it's highlighting in the MCU, which we believe it is, it could be foreshadowing the future introduction of Namor the Submariner to the franchise. Namor was one of Marvel's first heroes, and he's been a member of teams like the Avengers and the Illuminati, and his introduction could lead to some very exciting things happening going forward, especially now that Disney and Fox have come to a deal that might have otherwise made it difficult to have the character in the MCU.
Evening, boss.
Jocasta. As of 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony Stark no longer uses Jarvis to aid him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's due to the fact that the well-spoken AI's interface was uploaded into Vision's synthetic body to create a powerful new character. That meant Stark needed a replacement, which turned out to be Friday. But as the genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist was looking through a collection of UI chips to find one, eagle-eyed fans noticed that one of them was labeled Jocasta. In the comics, Jocasta is the robotic bride of Ultron, who was responsible for her creation in that reality. Like Vision, however, she went on to betray him and become a member of the Avengers. Now that we know her AI exists in the MCU, there's every chance we could see her in the franchise, albeit with a new origin. This scenario would become more likely to occur if Vision dies and the Avengers feel the need to add a new android character to their team. Given that Vision's death is something that is strongly expected to happen when Thanos tears the Mind Stone from his forehead, you have to think there's a strong possibility that need will arise fairly soon.
The universe rotates on a 5,000-year cycle. And once a cycle, all the worlds align.
Erik Selvig's chalkboard. In 2013's Thor: The Dark World, Erik Selvig was revealed to have been driven mad by his experiences in the Avengers movie a year earlier. He had experienced having a god inside his head, after all. Selvig ended up incarcerated in a mental institution, but he was still doing astrophysicist stuff, which we're quick to notice, and a number of those things could be hinting at some major stories in the franchise going forward. There is a reference to the Fault, which is the rip in the fabric of the universe that leads to the Cancerverse, a concept strongly associated with the Thanos Imperative story arc. There is also a reference to the Crossroads, which is a dimension in Marvel Comics that consists primarily of portals to other worlds, which could very easily become prominent, especially given the potential links to the X-Men movie franchise going forward. The Nexus of All Reality was also on there, and that's a location in the Florida Everglades where parallel universes sometimes intersect. Essentially, these Easter eggs could be hinting at the MCU clashing with a number of alternate realities in the future. Mindless Ones. In 2016's Doctor Strange movie, when Caecilius and his followers were sucked into the dark dimension after Dormammu was defeated in the movie's climactic battle, they appeared to turn into dark, almost featureless beings with a single glowing red eye. Anyone familiar with Marvel's comic books immediately knew what was happening. They were being transformed into Mindless Ones by Dormammu. In the comics, the Mindless Ones were created by the powerful entity known as Plokta, as opposed to the flame-headed sorcerer, and they were made to be unstoppable engines of destruction. They're super strong, almost impossible to physically hurt, and they're capable of projecting extremely powerful blasts of energy from their eyes. When Dormammu was expanding his domains across the multiverse, the Dark Dimension and the Mindless Ones were certainly among his most prominent acquisitions. The Marvel Universe has a number of characters who can summon the Mindless Ones using magic. Dormammu is obviously one of them, and Doctor Doom is another, for example, and there's every chance that we could see them being utilized in the MCU by one of those characters in the future, now that they've been teased, and that could put the franchise's heroes in some real trouble.
I can see it.
Eternity. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are the first Marvel Cinematic Universe offerings to truly venture into the cosmos, so it's no surprise when Marvel's cosmic entities appear or get mentioned. The likes of the Collector, Ego, the Living Planet, and Isan the Searcher have all featured in the Guardians movies to date, but we could have seen another one hinted at in 2017's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. When Ego was revealing his plan to take over the universe to Peter Quill, he tapped him on the forehead and gave him a vision of sorts. Peter's eyes turned black and starry, and he said he could see eternity eternity. He could have simply been referring to the fact that he could see beyond the edge of the universe, but he could also have been referring to the cosmic being known as eternity, whose body, in the comic books, just so happens to be black and starry like Peter's eyes were. The character had previously been pictured in the first Guardians movie too, on the walls of the Temple Vault on Morag. If these things were foreshadowing the introduction of eternity as a character to the MCU, it would truly be a spectacular thing to see.
So, King of Asgard.
Thor becomes king. Ever since Thor: The Dark World was released in 2013, Thor Odinson was on a quest to find his long-lost father, Odin. After finding out that Loki was pretending to be their father for several years, he demanded his help to seek him out.
I know exactly where he is.
They eventually found him on Earth with the help of Doctor Strange's magic and wisdom. Curiously enough, Odin within the comics has been sent to Earth before, something longtime comic book fans may have picked up on. Unfortunately, their reunion was short-lived.
Hey, take it easy, man.
As Odin passed away and Thor essentially took up the mantle as King of Asgard. However, this is not the first time the eye-patched King Thor has appeared within Marvel Comics. The Thor God of Thunder storyline that was released during 2012 depicted an older yet more powerful Thor in the far future who had been King of Asgard for several thousands of years. This storyline pitted him up against the Devourer of Worlds, Galactus, who was on a mission to feed upon the long-dead planet Earth. To defeat the hungry giant, Thor had to obtain the insane power of the Necro Sword, which also has been referenced within Thor Ragnarok. Who knows? Maybe if the Fox and Marvel deal comes through, we may be able to see old King Thor face off against the mighty Galactus at some point or another.
It's main event time.
Planet Hulk. Although not very subtle, the inspiration for one of the locations featured within Thor Ragnarok's plot is actually from a widely popular comic book storyline known as Planet Hulk. Due to certain film rights to characters within the Fantastic Four and X-Men franchises, it would be quite complicated to have Planet Hulk on the big screen. Sakaar is the planet that Thor found himself on after Hela got the best of him in their battle. However, after the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, Hulk's Quinjet also crash-landed on Sakaar. This led the Hulk to become the Green Scar and a celebrated gladiator within the Grandmaster's Colosseum. However, one big difference is that Green Scar within the comic book story sought freedom and wanted no part of being a gladiator, while Hulk within the film actually enjoyed beating the pulp out of other gladiators for the amusement of the crowds. One may notice that the armor pieces that Green Scar wore within the comic book is also very similar to that of Hulk's in the movie. Heck, even the initial fight in the Planet Hulk animated film has Hulk face off against a worthy friend and rival of Thor, that being Beta Ray Bill, who shockingly enough is also teased within the film.
Oh, Thor. Want to use a big wooden fork?
Arena Champions. Remember that we mentioned Beta Ray Bill being teased within the film? Well, he is not the only character who is briefly shown. If you pay attention to the Grandmaster's Tower, you will see the four faces of former champions that fought in the arena before Thor and Hulk did. Beta Ray Bill has longtime connections to not only Asgard, but also Thor, as their battle led Bill to become the worthy wielder of Stormbreaker, a hammer similar to that of Mjolnir. The other faces belong to that of Ares, the Greek god of war, Bi-Beast, a dangerous two-faced android, and the Man-Thing. These characters are not strangers to the Hulk, because he has fought against Ares and the Bi-Beast several times. Even the Man-Thing has gotten the best of the Hulk before. The question does arise though, will we ever get to see these bizarre and mysterious characters on the big screen? Will Beta Ray Bill fight alongside Thor Odinson in the battle against Thanos, the Mad Titan, in Avengers Infinity War? Will Thor get to wield the Stormbreaker after losing his iconic Mjolnir hammer? Only time will tell as to what characters will actually partake in one of Marvel's biggest films yet.
Wait, you're not going to face him, are you?
Yes, I am.
Gore the God Butcher. Gore the God Butcher is definitely not a well-known Marvel villain, but he is by far one of the most dangerous opponents that Thor had ever faced. Gore earned his title by slaying pantheons of gods across several timelines, which eventually led him to fight against and even defeat Thor.
What?
As we went over before, Thor's status as king and appearance were inspired by the storyline depicted in Thor God of Thunder. When the eye patch-wearing old King Thor had to protect the Earth from the clutches of Galactus, he discovered the power of the Necro Sword. The Necro Sword gives the user the ability to create a wide array of weapons and even armor. Hela is seen crafting swords, blades, and other sorts of weaponry when she fights against the Asgardian army, Thor, and even Surtur at the end of the film. When Gore finds himself fighting against Thors from several timelines, storylines, he showcases the same abilities that Hela did as well. Additionally, Thor Ragnarok's producer Brad Winderbaum revealed that Gorr was definitely an inspiration for Cate Blanchett's portrayal of Hela in the film. Even though Gorr himself wasn't in Thor Ragnarok, at least one aspect of his character was shown through Hela.
What are you exactly?
The Celestials. The Celestials are a mysterious yet ancient race which were teased all the way back in the 2014 film Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. When the collector spoke about the nature and origin of the Infinity Stones, we could see a celestial being showcased. Additionally, nowhere is a mining facility which is actually the severed head of a Celestial. However, a Celestial was also teased briefly in Thor Ragnarok. When the Grandmaster is witnessing the battle between Thor and Hulk in the Gladiator Arena, one can see the costume of what seems to be a celestial being. The Celestials within the comic books play important roles in seeking out worthy civilizations to help them advance, or in the case of the Collector's flashback, seek out civilizations to destroy using the Infinity Stones.
There's a little pea coming out of me right now.
Although we have yet to see a living Celestial on screen, with the exception of Ego and Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it is very likely that they will become involved alongside the abstract entities when they fight against Thanos in Infinity War's second part. Question is, however, will Marvel have the intention to actually show the Celestials in their true power and glory?
Loki, my boy.
Asgardian Play. One of the most hilarious scenes throughout Thor Ragnarok is undoubtedly the play dubbed The Tragedy of Loki. In the events of Thor the Dark World, Loki fools Thor into thinking that he had sacrificed himself to save Thor's life. This death not only fooled Thor, but also the audience.
Hurts, doesn't it?
Loki is not called the God of Mischief for nothing.
Piss off, Ghost!
It is revealed at the end of the film that Loki was actually pretending to be Odin and left his adoptive father on Earth. This play-pretend trick by Loki was soon unveiled by Thor, which jump-started the plot of the movie to seek out Odin. Within the play, Loki mentions how he turned Thor into a frog when they were younger. Shockingly, this is actually a nod to Throg, a frog with the powers of Thor, which debuted back in 1986. However, the best part about this scene is the actors who play the characters' parts. Loki is played by none other than Matt Damon, while Thor is played by Chris Hemsworth's real-life older brother, Luke Hemsworth. Curiously enough, Sam Neill plays the part of Odin, which is coincidental because Sam's Jurassic Park co-star Jeff Goldblum is also in the film. Talk about a jam-packed cameo scene.
Hey man.
The Warbound. Planet Hulk not only inspired the setting of Sakaar for Thor Ragnarok, but also introduced us to some members of the Warbound.
Over here. Pile of rocks waving at you. Here.
Korg is the clear and uncontested comedic relief within the film who is inseparable from Miek, his sidekick. However, within the Planet Hulk storyline, Korg and Miek play very different roles. Hulk meets them in the Gladiator Arena alongside the rest of the Warbound. They form a sort of familiar bond after they help Hulk defeat the Silver Surfer, who was the the Red King's champion in the comic book storyline. After Hulk and the Warbound obtain their freedom, they find themselves traveling to the Earth to fight the Earth's heroes alongside the Hulk. Although a World War Hulk story on the big screen seems very unlikely for now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe found a good way to introduce more than just one of Planet Hulk's elements. Those who loved the tear-jerking yet hilarious one-liners from the duo are in for a treat, as Thor Ragnarok's Taika Waititi has mentioned that a spin-off feature for those two characters has been talked about.
Why, thank you.
So, hopefully, this may not be the last we see of those characters.
Odin's treasure.
Odin's trophies. Those who have seen the very first Thor film, which debuted in 2011, may remember a very brief Easter egg that hinted at the Infinity Gauntlet we will see Thanos obliterate the Avengers with this April. However, this is contradictory due to seeing Thanos equip himself with the Infinity Gauntlet in 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron end credits scene. Also, due to all the Infinity Stones being scattered. For instance, the Tesseract is, or well, was, in Asgard. The Collector has the Reality Gem. The Power Gem is on Xandar. Doctor Strange has the Time Gem. And finally, the Mind Gem is literally a part of Vision. Plus, the one in Odin's trophy room was adorned with almost all of them. However, Thor Ragnarok essentially further made it clear that the Infinity Gauntlet that is within Odin's collection is actually fake, as are many other things within it. Seeing Hela knock over the gauntlet is not only humorous, but her comment regarding the collectibles fixes a continuity error within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Talk about a retcon. Fortunately, we will see the genuine and very real Infinity Gauntlet in action on April 27th, when Infinity War releases worldwide. Let's just hope that the other stones Thanos finds are fake, for the Avengers' sake.
You are an old man and a fool!
Unworthy Thor. For those who have kept up with Marvel's recent Thor comics, one may know that Thor became unworthy and the power of Thor, alongside the Mjolnir hammer, were given to Jane Foster instead. Thor had to overcome a trial during 2011's Thor film, after his father Odin believed he was too arrogant and cocky to be worthy of such power. Although Thor was not deemed unworthy since then in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he still lost Mjolnir after Hela utterly destroyed it in front of him. While Thor wasn't as mighty without his hammer in the comics, Odin made Thor realize that Mjolnir was never his source of power, and was merely just a tool to help focus it. This allowed Thor to unleash what he was truly capable of and became far stronger than he ever thought was possible. Regardless, it is easy to see the connection that Thor lost Mjolnir in both iterations and must master his powers without the aid of the hammer. Fortunately, Thor may obtain access to another Asgardian weapon soon, whether it be the Jarnbjorn, which Thor used in his younger days before he ever wielded Mjolnir, or Beta Ray Bill's Stormbreaker. We'll have to wait and see.
We're about to jump on that ginormous spaceship. You wanna come?
Thanos' spaceship. With the release of Infinity War Part 1 upon us, it's easy to get focused on how the other Marvel films are supposed to connect. However, we do see in the end credit scene of Thor Ragnarok that the spaceship the Asgardians are on has been discovered by Thanos' humongous ship. Additionally, the Infinity War trailer has revealed to us that at some point in the film, Thor will be drifting in space only to be found by the Guardians of the Galaxy. This possibly means that Thanos will have destroyed Thor's ship and will continue on his quest to reach the Earth. We also know that the Hulk will crash land on Earth and will fight alongside the Winter Soldier, who you might have seen in the end credit scene of February's Black Panther release. Ever since 2011, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has teased the Infinity Stones and Thanos. The majority of that is mostly due to Asgard and Loki's schemes. It's only natural that Thor Ragnarok teased what will more than likely be the opening sequence in Infinity War. If you missed Thanos' ship at the end sequence, don't worry. It'll be very hard to miss it on April 27th.
You expecting Sam Jackson show up with it?
End credit scene. It's become a staple of MCU films now, and audiences have been conditioned to sit through the credits to get a peek at what's to come. The scene was a pretty heavy and lengthy end credit scene too. After Thanos snaps his fingers and wipes out half the universe, we see what this looks like on the street level. Cars and helicopters begin crashing as they no longer have operators, and people begin vanishing into dust. Two of these people are former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Hill and Fury. Many fans were wondering if Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury would be in this film, and were pleased to see that he was at least in the final cut, albeit briefly.
Doesn't look like it's gonna be an easy fix.
In the middle of all the death surrounding him, including Agent Hill's, Fury sends out a distress call before dying himself. The recipient of his message? Captain Marvel. Played by Brie Larson, Carol Danvers has yet to make her MCU debut, but seeing as Fury made it his mission to alert her before he died, that means she'll play an important role in the yet-to-be-titled 4th Avengers film.
Oh, no, I'm not in the group yet. No, I'm afraid I just blew myself.
Arrested Development cameo. Avengers Infinity War was directed by the Russo brothers, the duo behind Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War. In their films, they like including little Easter eggs and cameos from their previous comedy ventures. In Winter Soldier, Community's Danny Pudi makes an appearance.
Excuse us.
And in Civil War, the Bluth stair car from Arrested Development can be seen in the airport fight scene.
Now with this car, you might get some stares.
The tradition, of course, continues in Infinity War with another Arrested Development Easter egg for you to look out for. In Nowhere, the Guardians of the Galaxy make their way through the collector's treasure trove of Easter eggs. In the past, we've seen everything from dark elves to Howard the Duck here. Fans of the comedy show will be quick to spot the blue humanoid alien hidden in the collection.
Until you look for it.
What makes him so special is that he's in fact Dr. Tobias Funke, who's known for being a Blue Man Group hopeful, who would likely catch this blink and you'll miss it reference on the first go.
Your demeanor is that of a pouty child.
The Soul World. In the second trailer for Infinity War, audiences got a peek at Thanos' ultimate plan and how he would go about executing it. With all 6 Infinity Stones, Thanos simply has to snap his fingers and half of all life in the universe would be extinguished. When Thanos actually does this in the film, instead of big explosions or anguish, we share an inner moment of reflection with the Mad Titan. With its orange hue and surreal setting, Thanos is likely transported to the Soul World upon completing his goal. The Soul World is the world inside of of the Soul Stone, and was only obtained by sacrificing the one thing he loved in the whole galaxy, his adopted daughter, Gamora. In the comics, the Soul World acts as a kind of heaven for those who were absorbed by the power of the Soul Stone. He sees a young Gamora in the temple where he formerly adopted her, and confesses the cost of his goal was losing everything. Seeing as Gamora died as a result of the sacrifice to the stone, it's likely her spirit is inside the stone and that she'll be brought back to life in the 4th Avengers film due in May 2019.
But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
Vision's new look. Vision spends most of Infinity War in dire distress. Considering he's one of the most powerful members of the Avengers, it makes sense that the plot immobilized him in order to put the heroes at an immediate disadvantage. Thanos is after all the Infinity Stones, and one of them is embedded in the forehead of Vision himself. During a quiet encounter in Scotland with his love, Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, Vision is ambushed by the Black Order, specifically Corvus Glaive. Glaive stabs Vision with his magical spear, and actually does some serious damage to him, forcing him to be brought to Wakanda for aid and shelter. Of course, things don't go as planned, and by the end, Thanos ends up taking the stone from Vision's head, effectively killing him. As his body goes limp, the trademark colors of Vision fade away until only a gray shell remains. We know he isn't completely white, but he is drained of all his colors. The look is eerily similar to the white Vision costume he wore in the comics as a member of the West Coast Avengers, which sported gray and white tones. Unfortunately for Vision, his time in the MCU with his other outfit is a painful one, and the little Easter egg ends up symbolizing not only the death of Vision, but of all the trillions of lives that are about to be lost.
Sounds like a place which I would like to visit.
Yeah, you should.
Nowhere Attack. One half of the Guardians of the Galaxy made their way to Nowhere to prevent Thanos from claiming the Reality Stone as his own. Naturally, things begin to fall apart the moment Drax sees the Mad Titan. Fans will remember that Drax promises to kill Thanos for the death of his family, and despite being held back a bit, charges toward Thanos. But Thanos already has the Reality Stone and makes a quick example of its power. He turns Drax into a set of cubed stones, and proceeds to turn Mantis into ribbons. This attack may seem random, but it's a direct callback to the Infinity Gauntlet comic. In that, Thanos unleashes the same attack on Nebula and her brother Star Fox. The Reality Stone is capable of doing all sorts of trippy things to people, and Thanos gets to use it even more in the comics. He turns Wolverine's skeleton into rubber and puts an airtight box around Cyclops' head to stop both mutants from fighting him. We're assuming that the Avengers will assemble to counter Thanos in the next film, but what other reality-bending effects could we see Thanos pull off?
But now it belongs to Beta Ray Bill!
Stormbreaker. One of the more important, if not bizarre, subplots in Infinity War comes from Thor's need to craft a new weapon. After Mjolnir was destroyed in Ragnarok, the God of Thunder needs a cosmic weapon to challenge Thanos, as lightning alone isn't gonna cut it. The name of his new axe? Stormbreaker. Fans of the comics will instantly catch the reference. While the axe itself is modeled after the ultimate Mjolnir design, the name actually comes from a different Marvel character altogether. In the Marvel Universe, there's only a small collection of characters who can wield Thor's hammer, and Beta Ray Bill is one of them. He may look like a giant horseman, and he is a giant horseman, but this character actually defeated Thor and claimed Mjolnir. Impressed, Odin gave Bill his own weapon instead, and the dwarves forged the mighty hammer Stormbreaker for him. The hammer granted Bill Asgardian power and even gave him a costume that looked exactly like Thor's. The character was ultimately cut from Thor Ragnarok, but eagle-eyed fans were able to catch his statue on the Grandmaster's tower, telling comic book fans that the horse-headed Asgardian-powered warrior was indeed a gladiator on the planet at some point.
You have never seen this, have you?
A new voice. When Thanos and Gamora venture to Vormir, they encounter a Guardian protecting the stone. It was quickly revealed that the Guardian was none other than the Red Skull. The Red Skull was the primary antagonist of the first Captain America film. A rogue Hydra science officer, Red Skull was consumed by the Tesseract in the film's climax, and his fate was unknown. But fans would have noticed something a little different about this Red Skull. While the voice is quite similar, it's actually not Hugo Weaving doing the voice work. Weaving, who is perhaps best known for his work in The Matrix and Lord of the Rings films,
You have only one choice.
but didn't return for Infinity War. Weaving stated that he signed a multi-picture deal, but wasn't that interested in returning to play the character, and hoped that if he refused to return, the studio would respect his wish. It seems like this was the case, and Marvel brought in Walking Dead actor Ross Marquand to provide the voice of the villainous character this time around. Marquand is best known for playing Aaron in the hit zombie series.
The Tesseract was the jewel of Odin's treasure room.
Death. In the comics, Thanos is doing everything he's doing in order to impress Mistress Death. She grants him certain powers in the comics, and Thanos undertakes a mission to kill half the universe on her behalf in order to court her. While this isn't the case in the MCU's version of Infinity War, there was still a very subtle reference to Lady Death in the film. Before revealing himself to be the Red Skull, a hooded figure confronts both Thanos and Gamora at the sanctuary where the Soul Stone is being kept. Appearing as a Grim Reaper, Red Skull's appearance is a clear reference to Lady Death herself. She was born at the same time as the Infinity Stones in the comics and presides over the Realm of Death, which houses the Infinity as well. She guides Thanos as a child, and the young Titan eventually becomes smitten with Death herself. Cloaked and sinister looking, the appearance coupled with the skull-like features of Captain America's first villain make a clear comparison to Death. The role may be switched for the film, as is the character's function, but it's a cool little Easter egg for fans of the comics.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, I'm using your made-up names.
Silver Hulk. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's Infinity War arc may be an original story, but it pulled a lot of references and story beats from its source material, and the comparisons to that arc can be seen from the early moments of the film. Before meeting his own untimely end, Heimdall uses the power of his ancestors to open the Bifrost. Hurtling through space, he ends up conveniently crashing in the New York City Sanctum Sanctorum, the headquarters of Doctor Strange. Having a messenger crash into the Sanctorum is a nice little reference to the comics, which saw a different character collide with the building to pass on the message. Instead of the Hulk, it was actually the Silver Surfer who made his way to Earth to warn Strange and Wong of the coming threat of Thanos. Even though the ownership of the Silver Surfer was with Fox during production of Infinity War, having Banner take on this role of the messenger made more sense for this story. Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is the classic Harold Ramis directed movie in which Bill Murray plays a moderately well-known weatherman who is forced to relive the same day over and over again. Now, what does this have to do with your average Marvel movie other than Bill Murray's alter ego of a weatherman ending with the suffix man? You know, like other superheroes, like Spider-Man. Well, with Doctor Strange, our hero dares to study the forbidden mystical art of time travel and unlocks hidden talents that we hadn't yet seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While Ant-Man got trippy with our concept of size, Doctor Strange stretches what we thought to be possible with time and space. And although the visual aspect of Doctor Strange's finale is one of a kind in the MCU, we've seen this type of storytelling device in, you guessed it, Groundhog Day.
What the hell?
It's obvious now, but it wasn't until fairly recently that eagle-eyed fans were able to make the connection between the 1993 comedy and the more recent MCU installment. When Stephen Strange's car crashes in the first act of the movie, his watch stops on February 2nd. Whether anyone noticed in theaters, it wasn't fully picked up by the general public until February 2018, when director Scott Derrickson confirmed on social media.
Eggshell shield.
Stan Lee. It wouldn't be a Marvel movie without a Stan Lee cameo, and while it's never a blink and you'll miss it performance, he's always there long enough to make an impression, but he never stays long enough to really make a dent in the story. We suppose that's a good thing, in that he's usually given something humorous to do.
Are you Tony Stank?
But he never distracts from the action at hand. Still, for a guy as likable and with as much of a connection to the material as Lee, you always hope he'll be given something fun to do. While his shining moment in Doctor Strange isn't anything more than innocent bystanders sitting on a bus while Strange and Mordo blow past them, his appearance comes with an Easter egg that deepens the details of the Strangeverse. Here, Lee is holding a copy of Aldous Huxley's 1954 book, The Doors of Perception. While it may not be as well remembered to modern readers, Huxley's extended essay was a big influence on the counterculture that blossomed out of the 1960s, and its ideas on the capacity and potential of the human mind no doubt served as a big influence on Stan Lee and Steve Ditko as they developed and realized the world of Stephen Strange.
It's only a flying dead stick.
Potential team-up. Any superhero movie worth its weight in vibranium knows to toss in a throwaway reference to other heroes and storylines. It keeps the hardcore fans invested and usually goes unnoticed by casual viewers, and thus doesn't serve as a distraction. Basically, it helps more than it hurts. And when more casual fans look back on the older movies after watching later installments, they'll be enthralled by the hidden messages they may have missed. Maybe when we get to the Doctor Strange sequel or a future Avengers film, we'll all look back on the following reference with awe. Or maybe you'll just think, duh, that was obvious. Well, regardless of your abilities to tell where the story is going, the scene leading up to his fateful car accident, where Doctor Strange is reviewing potential patients over his speakerphone, might be packed with more references than you originally thought. Turning them down as hopeless cases, Strange dismisses one possible surgical patient whose ailment sounds pretty familiar. A colonel in the US military whose spinal cord was damaged in an experimental armor/battlesuit accident. We all know James "Rhodey" Rhodes was paralyzed after his mid-flight fall in Captain America: Civil War. So could this be foreshadowing to a long-awaited Strange Iron Man team-up? Let's wait and see.
I see through you!
Psychedelic art. With the counterculture in the 60s and 70s, pop culture finally caught up to a level of experimentation that the visual arts had already been exploring for years. Artists like Salvador Dali were expanding what we thought possible with perception and perspective, causing us to question what even constituted art. M.C. Escher's mathematical and measured out landscapes hurt the mind as viewers try to figure out what is up and what is down, and it's obvious that the crazy geometric shapes made by the folding and reflective cityscapes, you know, when the Ancient One takes Doctor Strange on a series of mind-bending training sessions through big cities, these graphically challenging masterpieces gave original artist Steve Ditko the inspiration he needed to find the visual tone of Doctor Strange's world and the mind-blowing dreamscapes of his trippy, mystic adventures.
Teach me.
Even after all these decades since Strange's very first appearance in the Strange Tales comic book series, director Scott Derrickson felt that Ditko's surreal artistry still hadn't been brought to life on the big screen. With his movie, he said, "I don't think visual effects were ready to try and imitate him, but VFX finally caught up with Steve Ditko." Piper at the Gates. While we're on the subject of trippy, the instrumentals and vocals of Pink Floyd do for music what Dali was doing for visual arts. It's a surreal rock that captures the thoughtful and explorational changes the music industry was going through in the 60s and 70s. Naturally, in the drive leading up to Doctor Strange's car crash that sets his character's journey in motion, we can hear Pink Floyd's Interstellar Overdrive, a song from their 1967 album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Doctor Strange actually served as inspiration for the band, with the character making a hidden appearance on their second album cover and being brought up in their song Cymbeline. In the lyrics, "And Doctor Strange is always changing size." In keeping the Floyd and Marvel connection alive, Benedict Cumberbatch made a guest appearance at a concert hosted by guitarist David Gilmour a couple weeks before Doctor Strange's 2016 release date, in which the star sang the band's hit song Comfortably Numb. And speaking of bands connected to the Sorcerer Supreme and vice versa, we mentioned previously that Stan Lee's cameo featured his bystander character reading from Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception. Well, for your information, the title of Huxley's work is from where the seminal 60s band The Doors got their name.
We're not savages.
Undeath and Undestruction. When directing the movie, Scott Derrickson pulled a Spielberg, and just like when the latter was restoring E.T. for its anniversary re-release several years ago, he removed all the guns from the picture. Derrickson decided to craft a superhero movie that didn't feature guns in the frames. According to an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Derrickson stated that the purpose was more of a statement about superhero movies in general. Guns are usually an obstacle to a superpowered superhero. They're oftentimes one of the only ways an average human can get a leg up on our hero. But according to Derrickson, there's nothing less magical than a gun. Getting rid of any kind of traditional hardware was necessary to make it about more than destructiveness, which is a common theme within the action sequences and set pieces of the film.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
The ending itself, through its use of time travel and slow motion, is more about rebuilding the city than it is about death and destruction, which is refreshing in a genre where most climaxes involve heroes attempting to stop planet-destroying weapons, planet-destroying beings, or planet-destroying planets. We're looking at you, the eventual appearance of Darkseid in a Superman movie coming to a theater near us several years from now, we hope.
You will now receive the power to destroy the one who betrayed us.
Mindless Ones. When the villain Caecilius is sucked away towards the dark dimension, there's a chance you saw him and his henchmen transform into shadowy beings with beams of red light coming out of their eyes, like some kind of dark version of Cyclops from X-Men. This was not some random side effect of the mystical world they were getting pulled into. This is likely their transformation into the Mindless Ones. Doctor Strange might have been able to defeat them in their old forms, but the Mindless Ones are known to be incredibly powerful entities with the ability to bring destruction wherever they go. Hailing from the dark dimension, the Mindless Ones have a hefty center of gravity, allowing them to withstand most obstacles. They don't make much noise, which is all the more threatening as their sheer numbers overtake and overpower their enemies. Caecilius himself seems to become one of these creatures as he is absorbed into Dormammu's dimension, and if he loses all identity in joining a Borg-like army of Mindless Ones, there's no telling what type of terror Dormammu's army will unleash upon the world in the Doctor Strange sequels.
It's the end and the beginning.
If Caecilius is in fact a Mindless One, would we ever be able to tell it was Mads Mikkelsen underneath that dense outer shell and behind that glowing red eye? We'll see.
I see they made you master of this sanctum.
Brother Voodoo. In one of the more subdued cameos, a character from the Doctor Strange comics made a brief appearance, but only under his alter ego. He wasn't flat out named in the movie, but according to director Scott Derrickson, an actor named Mark Anthony Brighton was playing a larger role than just that of one of the Ancient One's guardians. In the film, Derrickson assigned this character the name of Daniel Drum. True fans might recognize Drum as the alter ego of Brother Voodoo, a deep-cut character from the comics. Derrickson revealed the guy's identity during a Q&A following the release of the film. He stated that Daniel Drum was killed by Caecilius, setting the stage for the character to be resurrected as Brother Voodoo in a later installment, just as he appears in the comics. Derrickson explained that when you go to make a movie like this, you have this huge buffet of characters. I don't see a Doctor Strange franchise without him. Spirit-bound to his twin brother Jericho, Brother Voodoo is a Haitian superhero who eventually becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme. It'll be interesting to see if the MCU follows this arc as they delve deeper into the Doctor Strange mythos.
Vaulting boots of Valtor.
Valtor. Valtor is the name that gets thrown around a lot by Strange and his associates. Valtor is first mentioned under the title of The Vapors of Valtor in Doctor Strange's first appearance, Strange Tales number 115. There have never been any footwear in the comics like the vaulting boots of Valtor that are mentioned in the movie, but Valtor's name is lent to many magic artifacts throughout the comics. Other mystical objects also have their origins in classic issues, like the Wand of Watum, which first showed up in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2, famous for the first adventure to feature Doctor Strange and the Web-Slinger in the same comic book. As Steve Ditko created both characters, it's awesome to see him play with the styles of both superheroes in the same panels. The Cloak of Levitation has also been around since Strange Tales number 127, in Dormammu's second appearance, but even the experts at the website Den of Geek don't believe the cloak has ever been given as much of a mind of its own as it has in the movie. Most importantly, Doctor Strange's magic Eye of Agamotto is used by the Doctor to manipulate the time around him. Fans strongly believe this to be the Time Stone, one of the Infinity Stones for which Thanos is searching.
What's this, time launcher?
Shambhala. Shambhala is a great classic rock song by Three Dog Night and a great joke in the Doctor Strange movie. In the midst of Stephen Strange's training, Mordo hands him a browned scrap of paper with the mysterious text Shambhala scratched onto it. Strange and we, the audience, assume it's some kind of awe-inspiring magical word, but Mordo clarifies it's the Wi-Fi password.
Maybe.
However, in the Hindu and Tibetan Buddhist religions, Shambhala is a sacred kingdom that's home to legendary texts and is a site of great knowledge. It's also the title of a 1986 Strange story in which the Sorcerer Supreme deals with the passing of the Ancient One. Sure, Shambhala is just a bit played for laughs in the movie, but if the characters know about it enough to name a Wi-Fi password after it, maybe it does serve some importance to the story going forward. And perhaps the movie is making a connection between the ancient source of knowledge and our new unlimited source of knowledge, the internet. Maybe Doctor Strange just needs to ask himself the same question Three Dog Night asks in their song. How does your light shine in the halls of Shambhala?
A what? You might have a gift for the mystic arts, but you still have much to learn.
That is the future calling.
King T'Challa